The discussion of the Tower of Babel and the scattering of the nations. We found early in chapter 11 that civilization had gotten together and said, we'd like to build this tower up into the heavens so that we can make a name great for ourselves. We want to build a city so that we won't be scattered all over the earth. Well, those two things were exactly contrary to what God wished for his people. The idea of building a tower up to heaven was just human pride talking. And it failed miserably. They failed to get the job done. And in fact, I pointed out to you, ironically, as they were talking about building this tower up into the heavens, the text says that God had to come down. That's how little it was, at least from his perspective. And also, the building of the city was contrary to what God for. What's with this thing? In and out, in and out. He wanted them to fill the earth. And the idea of a city where everybody stayed concentrated and stayed together was really contrary. The earth was wide open, and it needed to be filled, and it needed to be stewarded by humans. And so as a result of that, God confused their language. They could no longer communicate with each other, and it ended up accomplishing what God wanted, which was the nations got scattered. Towards the end of chapter 11, genealogy of Terah and Abram, and it was an introduction to the character of Abram, which we're going to study quite a bit in the next few weeks because he's a pivotal character. There was this man named Terah who had 3 sons. Abram was apparently the oldest. There was another one called Haran, and apparently Haran died before he could raise his children because he had a son named Lot. And in the absence of Haran, his father, it seemed like Lot gravitated toward son, his uncle, Abram. As we go forward, we will see that their relationship is key. It's pivotal. So Abram is not a lot of fanfare, at least as the genealogy goes forward, but he becomes quite important as chapter 12 moves on. As we I know I am, but you want to swap this out, Ernst? I was doing that on Run this morning also, wasn't it? Yeah.
It's the wire.
It's the wire?
Yeah. Here, take this off your belt.
Yeah.
Take your belt. We're going to lay it right here.
Oh. And that's going to fix it.
That's going to fix it.
Okay. Good. Good. Now, if I don't forget and, walk over somewhere and drag that and my computer both off the stand, that would be fantastic. Okay, as chapter 12 begins, we find God talking to this character, Abram, who's mentioned only in a genealogy up to this point. And he tells him, go from your country, leave what is familiar and easy for you to live with, and go to a place that I'm going to show you. He doesn't offer a specific place or anything like that. He says, I'm going to show you. So Abram didn't know where he was going, but he knew who he was going with. And as a result, as an incentive to get Abram to take this adventure on himself, God made 7 promises to him. First of all, he said, I'm going to make you a great nation. I'll make your name great so that you can be blessed. I will bless those who bless you. I will curse those who curse you. And through you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. And we talked about some of the ramifications of that last week. I told you, don't go to sleep on the idea that Abram was a blessing. Because as we go through the story of his life, we will find that anyone he comes in contact with that really treats him fairly, they prosper as well as Abram. And that's true of his family as well, Isaac and Jacob and Joseph. They all benefit from knowing him. Also, the last promise, through you all the families of the earth will be blessed. Most Christians' knee-jerk reaction to that is, well, he's talking about Jesus coming through Abram. And that's true. I don't want to detract from that at all. But I think we also kind of miss the point. God's intention for his chosen people, his chosen family, is that they would be a light throughout all of their generations, that they would be a light to the nations around them, that the other nations would notice the way that they lived, the God that they served, and the things that they enjoyed as a result of their relationship with God, and they would be blessed in that way. On top of that, Jesus, of course, coming through that family. So I think that's about as far as we got. I'd like to get a volunteer reader now for verses 4 through 9 of chapter 12 of Genesis. Okay?
So Abram left as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. He took his wife Sarai and his nephew Lot and all the possessions they had accumulated and the people they acquired in Haran. And they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. Abram traveled through the land as far as the site of the great tree of Moreh at Shechem. At that time the Canaanites were in the land, and the Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. From there he went on toward the east, toward the hills east of Bethel, and pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. And then Abram set out and continued toward the Negev.
All right, in verses 7 and 8, Abram gets a promise made to him. He says, to your offspring, I'm going to give this land, the land that he was standing on. This is the land that God had told him to leave his prior country for and travel about 400 miles in order to be there. So as soon as he got the promise of having this land, what did he do? As almost an instinct. Yeah. All right. He built an altar. He built an altar. And it looks like in a couple of verses there, he builds two of them, actually. The first place that he arrived, and then as he went on toward Bethel, he built another one. And it says that he invoked the name of the Lord. So every time that God promises him something significant, he builds an altar and worships in commemoration of and appreciation for the promises that he has received. Okay, let's move on. Verses 10 through 17, if I could get a volunteer reader for that.
Now there was a famine in the land. Abram went down to Egypt to live there for a while because the famine was severe. As he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, I know what a beautiful woman you are. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Then they will kill me, but will let you live. Say you are my sister, so that I will be treated well for your sake, and my life will be spared because of you. When Abram came to Egypt, the Egyptians saw that she was a very beautiful woman, and when Pharaoh's officials saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and she was taken into his palace. He treated Abram well for her sake, and Abram acquired sheep and cattle, male and female donkeys, maidservants, and camels. How far was it?
Through 16. That's good. All right. So, no sooner has Abram arrived in the land, and he has some challenges to his faith. What's going on? His wife was beautiful, okay. Most people wouldn't consider that a problem, but it became a problem here for Abram. Okay. All right, what else? There's more. All right, his faith got challenged. What else? Something else even more basic. Okay, all right, back up a little. Okay, there's a famine. First thing, he gets into this place that God said, I'm going to take you here. And the next thing you know, there's a famine. You know? So I'm sure that Abram thought at this point, this is kind of a bumpy ride I'm on here. It's famine as soon as I get here. And then I'm an alien. I don't have a lot of rights here in Egypt where I had to go to escape the famine. And I'm concerned that the Egyptians will see my beautiful wife and kill me and take her. And so he hatches a plan. Let's not call you my wife. Let's call you what? My sister. Okay. Was he outright lying here? No. Okay. We saw from the genealogies that we looked at last week that Sarah was the daughter of Terah, just like Abram was the son of Terah. Now, Abram and Sarai had different mothers, but she was in fact Abram's half sister. So that's their plan, and let's see how it evolves here. I'd like somebody to read verses 17 to the end of the chapter.
But the Lord inflicted serious diseases on Pharaoh and his household because of Abram's wife Sarah. So Pharaoh summoned Abram. What have you done to me? He said. Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say, she is my sister, but I took her to be my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and go. Then Pharaoh gave orders about Abram to his men, and they sent him on his way with his wife and everything he had.
Okay. Would you say that Abram handled this situation very well? No. All right. Well, what's the problem here?
He let somebody else marry his wife.
Yeah. He told part of the truth, but he didn't get the entire truth out. And as a result of that, sure enough, the officials of Pharaoh see her. They tell Pharaoh how beautiful she is, and she gets taken into Pharaoh's house. Now, Abram did get some benefit out of this, because Pharaoh gifted him a lot of livestock, it looks like. But that wasn't the end of the episode, right? What happens next? Pardon? Yeah, there are plagues. I don't know exactly what the nature of it is. It doesn't tell us what the plagues were like. But nonetheless, it afflicted Pharaoh and his house. And Pharaoh somehow seems to know what the source of this is, because he calls Abram in and says, What have you done with me? What have you done to me? Why didn't you tell me that she was your wife? And as it turns out, were Abram's fears justified at all? No. Pharaoh says, all you had to do was tell me she's your wife. I'd have left her alone. Everything would have been fine. But as a result of that, Pharaoh does not enjoy having Abram on the premises anymore. And they sent the family on the way with his wife and all that he had. Now, it's interesting. Compare the experience of Abram and Sarai in Egypt with that of the Israelite captivity there several centuries later. Okay, Steve? Okay. Good. I never thought of that. Yeah, because the Exodus account is God hardening Pharaoh's heart and Pharaoh's heart being hardened and that kind of thing. Okay. All right. Good. What else? Compare. Yeah, the famine was the reason they were in Egypt to start with. Yeah, and then there were plagues associated with Abram being there. All right. What else? Did they? Okay, Louis. Oh, the plague's talking. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We can't know for sure. Okay, Crystal? Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. All right. And we're not told. It looks like God has somehow communicated to Pharaoh the real situation because Abram didn't. Right? Somebody, Lisa. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It was their whole economy. Yeah. And they had become the great nation that was forecast, and the Egyptians were benefiting from cheap labor. Okay, Shavaz.
They both left with possessions from Egypt.
Yeah, yeah. We talked Wednesday night about the building of the tabernacle and all the stuff that was overlaid with gold and all that kind of thing. They didn't get that when they were slaves in Egypt. Slaves don't have a lot of gold, but the Egyptians of the time were so happy to get rid of the Israelites. They just said, "Take it all, get out of here. You can't leave fast enough." Okay, all right. So I think this was kind of a foreshadowing of what was going to happen to Abraham's family several centuries down the line. All right, let's move on to chapter 13, verses 1 through 7.
So Abram went up from Egypt to the Negev, with his wife and everything he had, and Lot with him. Abram had become very wealthy in livestock and in silver and gold. From the Negev, he went from place to place until he came to Bethel, the place between Bethel and Ai, where his tent had been earlier, and where he had first built an altar. There Abram called on the name of the Lord. Now Lot, who was moving about with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents. But the land could not support them while they stayed together, for their possessions were so great they were not able to stay together. And quarreling arose between Abram's herders and Lot. The Canaanites and Perizzites also living in the land at the time were also living in the land at the time.
All right. How apparently was wealth measured in Abram's day? Okay, Akora? Yeah, tangible type things. Not so much gold and silver, but flocks and herds, particularly if that was your occupation. And apparently, he and Lot had done extremely well in that regard. So, a problem comes up between Abram and Lot. What's the nature of it?
It's not enough space.
Yeah. Their flocks and herds have become so numerous they kind of overrun the land. There's not enough room. It doesn't say that Abram and Lot were in conflict over this, but their households were in conflict, and so something's got to be done. This is a problem of prosperity. You know, we all know about the problems associated with poverty. But sometimes there can be problems associated with prosperity. What kind of problems can prosperity create? Yeah, that's for sure. What else? Pardon? Yeah, exactly. Rather than some people saying, "Well, I've prospered, I've got enough," they say, "I'll never have enough." You know? All right? Greed comes out of it. Steve? Yes, covetousness. Okay, so if you can't ever get enough, then you not only want what you've got, but you want what everybody else has as well. Okay, Dolores? Yeah, anxiety, insecurity about it. Okay, Catherine? Oh, excellent. Yeah, that's good. And we see that in our world all the time. There's a certain arrogance that gets associated with wealth a lot of times, and it comes out of, I don't need anything else. I'm in charge.
Part of it too, John, is like the servants, the manservants and whatever, they go out and graze the flock. Well, they're grazing the flock. Am I supposed? You got your to-do list, brother. You need to do it because the boss said get it done, and you can't do it because they got their sheep out there.
Sure. Okay. All right. So they got this problem. They've gotten together. They've described the problem. Here's what they're going to do about it. I volunteer reader for verses 8 through 13.
And Abram said to Lot, let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdmen and thy herdmen. For we are brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or if thou depart to the right, I will go to the left. And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest to Zoar. Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves one from the other. Abram dwelled in the land of Canaan. Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent toward Sodom. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly.
All right. Lot and Abram get together. How would you critique Abram's handling of the problem? Yeah, I think it's really good. The first thing he says to Lot is, let there be no strife between you and me. I told you, it seems like as chapter 12 begins, God just arbitrarily selected Abram. He doesn't say, I did it because he was righteous or because he was faithful or anything like that. But we get it explained to us later, just a little bit at a time, as we get familiar with the character of Abram. So Lot says, no strife between you and me. And he gives Lot, even though Lot is younger, Abram's got seniority, he tells Lot, go wherever you'd like and I'll take what's left over. Okay? All right, so Lot's a good herdsman. He looks over everything and he sees the plain of Jordan is well watered, very essential. And so he moves off in the direction of Zoar and the plain of Jordan, and they separated from each other. And this was a peaceful separation, no difficulty whatsoever, but they needed the space in order to feed their flocks and herds. So what criteria did Lot use for deciding which land he was going to take? Yeah. All right. In the long run, was this a wise decision? No. What's the problem? Okay. He disregards the fact that he's moving over very close to some very wicked people. Some that, as we will see in the coming chapters, are going to get God's anger to the point he wants to destroy them, and there is Lot right up next to them. Okay. Now, let's read verses 14 through the end of chapter 13. Okay. After the separation between Abram and Lot, God reinforces a promise that he'd made earlier about the land that he was standing on. And he just says, look around every direction, and you're going to own all of this. Okay? There's something different about this particular promise than the one that was in chapter 12. See if you can identify. As these promises get reinforced, God kind of doles it out a little piece at a time. You know, he doesn't give them the whole picture at the beginning. So in 13, he gives them a little piece of information that they didn't get in chapter 12. Okay, forever? Yeah? Yeah? And in chapter 12, who was the land promised to? In chapter 12? His offspring. Okay? Now when we get to chapter 13, what does he say? You and your offspring. Okay? So now Abram is thinking, this is not just something I'm doing for my ancestors. I'm going to personally benefit from this land that God has promised. Okay? So we will see these promises getting fleshed out as we go along. We won't take the time to read chapter 14. I've got a little summary of it for you, but in the interest of saving time and moving on through the book, we won't address it in a lot of detail. In chapter 14, a group of 4 kings who had been serving another group of 5 kings rebelled. This is in the region that Abram and Lot have settled in. Among the 5 kings was the king of Sodom. The 4 kings defeated the 5 kings and took all their possessions and people, Lot and family included. Upon hearing this, Abram took his own trained men and rescued Lot and all the stolen treasure. In other words, Abram and his people did something that 5 kings couldn't do. Okay? Melchizedek, who happened to be the king of Salem and a priest, blessed Abram, and Abram gave him 1/10 of everything. The king of Sodom asked that he be given his people back and offered to give the stolen treasure to Abram. Abram declined the offer because he did not want the king of Sodom to be able to say that he had enriched Abram. So, I think largely out of concern for Lot, Abram takes his own household, all of his servants, and they go and deal with these 4 kings, and they get Lot and his family back. They also do the service for the king of Sodom of getting his people back and all of the stuff that the kings had stolen. So, like I said, Abram did something that the 5 kings couldn't do. Now, there's a kind of a obscure guy in the middle of all this named Melchizedek. And I think if we didn't have Hebrews chapter 7, we would kind of read over it and not think he was significant any different than a lot of the other names that we would encounter in the book of Genesis. But the writer of Hebrews seizes upon this episode and uses Melchizedek, this king of Salem, as a type of Christ. His name, Melchizedek, means the king of righteousness. Salem, or what later became Jerusalem, means peace. So as he was the king of Salem, he was the king of peace. And he was both priest and king, the Genesis account tells us. I don't know of any other Bible character who was a priest and a king, both. And so Melchizedek was unique in that respect. Also, Hebrews says something kind of unusual. It says that he had neither beginning of days nor the end of life. Now, I think what that means is he didn't have a genealogy, okay? And the Hebrew writer is arguing from the silence of Scripture. I don't know that Melchizedek lived forever, or they didn't have parents or anything like that. But the fact that the Scripture never speaks of that, the Hebrew writer makes him into a type of Christ, and so he becomes a very important New Testament figure.
There's a word for that, and I can't recall what it is, but when they feel like Christ appeared in the Old Testament, that's what, like this case here, that's can't remember where, but after that, it's never, once Jesus shows up in the Gospels, that never is mentioned the rest of the Bible.
Yeah. Well, I think the accounts talk about types and antitypes, and I don't know that Jesus was there present occupying the bodies of one of these characters or anything like that. But there's certainly similarities, and the New Testament seizes upon these similarities to teach us from it. Okay. Scan through the latter part of chapter 14, and I'd say 17 through 22. Just scan that right quick and compare the reception that this Melchizedek gave Abram to the one that the king of Sodom gave Abram after his citizens were rescued and his treasure restored. What did Melchizedek do for Abram? Blessed him, okay? All right, he had kind things to say about him, and gives him credit for delivering him from the enemies, and Abram gives him tribute. All right, what about the king of Sodom? Give me my people back. Give me my stuff back. The difference is pretty striking, I think. In one case, there's a great deal of gratitude, a great deal of honor and respect, and then in another case, there is greed kind of seeping through what the king had to say. So that chapter is just kind of an aside, and I didn't want to spend a lot of time on it, but it does get some real significance in the New Testament. Okay. All right, let's move on to a next block of Scripture. I do divide this up a little differently than your books do, and this is a pretty good sized block, beginning at chapter 15 and going on through chapter 20. But we will see the character of Abram emerge. We'll get to know a lot more about him and the way he goes about doing his business. Here's what's coming up in those 5 or 6 chapters. The promises made to Abram in chapter 12 are repeated and expanded upon because of her childlessness that got mentioned in chapter 11. Sarai suggests that Abram try to produce children with her Egyptian slave Hagar. It's successful in producing a child, but it does not produce a harmonious outcome. Abram and Sarai are given new names to indicate their new relationship with the Lord. Covenant of circumcision is given to Abraham and family as a seal of the covenant between them and God. Abraham and Sarah are promised a son within the next year. Abraham pleads with God for the sparing of Sodom and Gomorrah. They are destroyed, but Lot and his daughters are spared. So there's a lot going on in the next few chapters. Yeah. All right, 15, 1 through 6. Could I get a volunteer reader for that?
Outside and said, look up at the heavens and count the stars, if indeed you can count them. Then he said to him, so shall your offspring be. Abram believed the Lord, and he credited to him as righteousness.
All right, after these things have happened, the Lord approaches Abram and says, don't be afraid. Why at this particular point might Abram been a little fearful? Why did he need that reassurance? What's happened to him since he left his own familiar country? Famine? War? All the things that Revelation talks about, he's had a pretty tough time. And no doubt he's starting to wonder, this God that's going to protect me and give me this land and make my name great and all that. I don't know. The beginning's not as promising as I might have thought. So God steps in and says, "Don't be afraid." In spite of his concerns, maybe his fears, Abram addresses the Lord as sovereign Lord. What does this tell you about his understanding of God? Yeah. What does sovereign mean? Yeah. Control, power. Okay? So we start to see the faith of Abraham emerge from kind of obscurity. We haven't seen too much about Abram's character at this point. We did see him make a peaceful settlement with Lot, and now we see him, his faith beginning to grow. He doesn't abandon God at this point, even though there have been some difficulties. Now, in the passage that we read, Abram's getting anxious about this great nation thing since he's 75 plus years old and he doesn't have any children. So he suggested a solution to his problem of childlessness. What was it? Yeah. And that was done occasionally in this situation. When a family had no children and they're getting older, rather than to leave their estate in chaos, they designate one of their servants, probably their most faithful and highly respected one, to be the heir. And so Abram says, that looks like the route I'm going to have to go here.
And I think, Johnny, was the doubt of, like, I'm old, she's old. We've had kids. We've been trying for years.
Yep.
There's doubt.
Yep.
I can't do this. We can't do this.
Yeah. God can't do it, and so let's help him out a little here, right? And I put in this caution, watch for this to be repeated in the future. Okay? Verse 6 says that he believed the Lord, and the Lord reckoned it to him as righteousness. What is righteousness?
Pure heart.
Okay, pure heart. Anybody want to embellish that? Okay, all right. Obedience. Okay. I would define righteousness as having a right relationship with God. Okay? So, Abram believed the Lord, and the Lord reckoned it to him as righteousness. What does it mean for someone to believe the Lord? Okay, all right. Trust? Catherine? Yeah. Put your confidence, put your trust in him. Yeah, okay. All right, good. Okay, all right. I think that there are several components of faith. We need to be aware of them. First of all, there are certain basic truths. If we say that we have faith in God or faith in anything for that matter, there are certain basic truths that we have to subscribe to. Okay? As Christians, what are some of the basic things that we have to agree to before we can say we have faith in God? Yeah, all right. He was creator. All right. Yeah, only one. Excellent. All right, Tanya? Okay, all right. Yeah, all-knowing, all-powerful. Sovereign, yes. Okay, I think we have to have a good, healthy idea of really who God is. And if we're talking about Christian faith, then we have to bring the Son of God into this belief system as well. We have to believe that he was God's Son. We have to believe that he lived on this earth, that he lived an exemplary life, that he died for our sins, and that he was raised back to life and ascended back to the Father. Those are some of the basic things that we have to subscribe to in our heads. But Scriptures tell us that mental assent alone is not really faith. And I would point you to James chapter 2:19, where it says the devils believe and tremble. So they've got all the facts, just like we do. Maybe they've got a better grasp of them than we do, but they deny it in their lives, and they work contrary to those beliefs, and so that's not faith. All right. Somebody mentioned this earlier. Several different ways that you suggested commitment or allegiance. So it's not just having a set of facts in your head, but it's being committed, saying that that's who I follow. That's who I take my direction from. And then I think there, as a sign of faith, we must have works of obedience, obvious works that show that we are, in fact, putting our confidence in God. All right. Then the last part of the reading, it says, he believed the Lord, and the Lord reckoned it to him as righteousness. What does that mean?
I like your definition, right with God. So that means he was right with God since he believed him.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Steve?
Very troubling, that verse 6. Very troubling because Abram believed the Lord. But the next chapter,
Yes.
he loses confidence. I'm sorry if you're going to carry this some other time.
Yep. Yeah. Well, exactly. And I pointed out to you as we got into this study, Genesis doesn't hide people's warts. I mean, he puts them out there, and I think it makes these people so much more relatable. I mean, so much more resembling our wavering and indecision and some of those kinds of things. His belief was credited to him as righteousness. Now, the best way I can explain this is, has anybody gone to college and taken an exam and gotten credit for class? Okay, that's pretty common. If you're knowledgeable in an area and you can demonstrate that on a test, oftentimes they will give you credit for it. You don't go to class, you don't attend the lectures, you don't take the tests, you don't write the reports, you don't do any of that stuff. They just give you credit for it, as if you had done all of those things. And so Abram, we've already seen, in every situation, he was not righteous. He made mistakes, and he's going to make a whole lot more of them as we go along here. But because of his faith, it was God looked at him and said, "You're righteous, even though you've got all these things that you should have done better." Okay? All right, I got 5 minutes left. Explain what it means to be justified by faith. Romans talks about this a lot. Uses Abram as an example of being justified by faith. All right? All right. Okay. Justified by faith in the New Testament is kind of put up against justification by what? Works. Yeah. Catherine? Him of his garment? Yes. Your faith has made you well. Sure. Yeah. Okay. All right. Good. And this chapter 15, verse 6, Romans chapter 4 just takes off on this idea and it explains what it is, so it means a lot to Christians. Abraham was justified by his faith, not by his works. His works weren't always exemplary. He was not justified by circumcision, which comes a little bit later in Genesis, or keeping the law, because God considered him righteous before he was circumcised and before the law was ever given. He was righteous. Abraham is the father of both the circumcised and the uncircumcised who have the faith of Abram. Romans redefines what it means to be Israel, and we can spend a lot of time talking about that. This faith also encompasses believing in Jesus as God's Son, and Abraham's faith is exemplified by his patient belief that God would keep his promise and make him the father of many nations. Okay, so most of that is in Romans chapter 4. I think that's a good way of linking what we as Christians need to know with what we're learning from Genesis about Abram. I think that's about it for today. But this is a good place to quit. We'll pick up with chapter 15, verse 7 next week, and follow along also in your books if you're doing so. Thank you. This is all right. I think it's working.
Yeah, it's on.
It's working.
Okay, now just put this in your pocket.
No. Oh, okay. So it doesn't have that.
Yeah, it does,
wire.
but I take it.
Okay, so it's not going to jiggle around. Okay. All right. We'll try that next time.
Okay, that's going to be for you.
Oh.
Oh, this works pretty good. Yeah, we have to work. No problem. Then you can go to the internet. Oh, because for some reason the signal, and I may have to put I have a wireless screen because of the connection, all electric and everything on the signal. But once you see once it's